Today, we have a true legend in the house. My guest is a prolific and celebrated author whose literary journey spans over 5 decades. He is a true luminary in the realm of children's and young adult literature and has crafted over 80 books across various genres, leaving a celebrated impression on the literary landscape. Among his renowned works are titles like The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle, which earned him a Newbery Honor, Nothing But the Truth, which garnered him another Newbery Honor, and Crispin, which earned him the Newbery Medal. His literary prowess extends beyond these award-winning titles to encompass a diverse array of genres, including historical fiction, fantasy, and mystery. Join us as we delve into the fascinating world of his imagination and explore the stories behind his award-winning works. Please welcome Avi.
Well, thank you. Sorry you had to remind everyone I'm 5 decades old, but that's okay. That makes me a little younger, actually. So,
It means you work hard.
okay, there you go.
Can you share with us a bit about your early experiences with literature? Were there any particular books or authors that ignited your passion for storytelling during your formative years?
Yeah, when I was a kid, growing up in New York City and Brooklyn, I lived in a household where there were a lot of books. My parents had wanted to be writers. My mother tried to be a writer, my father not. But it meant that book culture was important in my house. Every birthday, every Christmas, I would receive at least a book, and I had my own library. My mother read to us. I have a twin sister and an older brother. She used to read to us every night. Every Fridays, we would go to the public library neighborhood, and I was allowed to take anything I wanted. And at an early age, I was a reader. So right from the beginning, and it's not a coincidence, I have a twin sister and she's a writer too. So that tells you something. But the other important influence was radio. Now, this is before television. And I used to listen to the radio, and there were a lot of children's shows. Now, the literary quality of these was pretty low, but they were adventure mysteries, cowboy westerns, and things like that. The point is, they were narrative. And if you have a chance to listen to them, when you hear that they were radio plays, you instantly think they must have been all dialogue, but they were not. They were full of narrative, and some of them were fairly sophisticated when I went back and listened to them. So, in every sense of the word, I was hearing and reading narratives. So, it's hardly a surprise that I move towards the idea of writing narratives.
Your diverse body of work spans across various genres and themes. What motivates you to explore such a wide range of storytelling adventures? And do you have a favorite genre or theme to write about?
Well, first of all, I don't have a favorite. I love writing funny books, but they're very hard to write. So I've written some, but not as many as I'd like. I think I've always been lucky enough to be able to write what I wanted to write. That is to say, I sit down and I don't worry about how I'm going to support myself at the given moment because I had day jobs and things like that. But lately, I've done a lot of historical fiction, maybe because I'm reaching the age where I'm sort of historical myself. So, and I don't now say, how old are you?
16.
I have grandchildren, but they all live in the East Coast and I live here in Denver. So I don't hang around guys like you. And as a result, I tend to go to the historical because it gives me a certain freedom. I don't know your slang, your ways, your phrasing. Uh, I don't know your cliches, etc. Your vocabulary. So I sort of shy away from that because I don't think without being immersed in it, I could do it. But historical fiction allows me to invent that kind of language. And I tend to that. Now, at the moment, I'm trying to decide what to write next. And I just took a long walk and so forth. And I sort of think I'm going to write another historical novel, but we'll see.
As an accomplished author with numerous accolades, what underlying message or theme do you hope resonates most with your readers across your works?
I don't try to give messages. I try to give experiences that are fun to read, that are exciting, that are adventurous, that make you laugh, make you have emotions. Uh, I think the value of reading, and I'm talking mostly about fiction, but I read a lot of history, is that you enter into those experiences yourself. Here you are, uh, 16, living in New York. Uh, how about entering into the world of 18th century London or what have you? And it's not, I mean, human nature is such, I think, it's not that different. And by sharing the experience of a girl, an older man, it becomes your experience as well. And that's more than anything else what I'd like to share with you as a writer.
Avi, you frequently travel to schools around your country to connect with your readers. Could you elaborate on the significance of these school visits in your career and perhaps share a memorable experience or interaction that reaffirmed the impact of engaging directly with young readers?
Well, it's wonderful to meet my readers because I learn from them a great deal. Um, it, it frankly gives me pleasure. I just enjoy it on that purely personal level. For the most part, I find it's always been a puzzle to me. Kids ask me the same questions over and over again, no matter where I am. Where do you get your ideas? How long does it take to write a book, et cetera, et cetera. But every once in a while, you get a curious question. I remember one kid saying, well, what do you think of adjectives? I mean, it's, I had to pause at that, and say, oh, I think they're wonderful, but I don't know. I mean, the other day, someone asked me, which of the characters in your books are most like you, or which are the most adventurous or different? I love those kinds of questions because they make me think about things that I don't normally think about. Or, how do you go about, you wrote a book like True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. Uh, you're a male. How do you go about writing about a female? I mean, how does that work? How does that happen? So it's good to talk to kids. I mean, my message to kids almost always is to read and read and read more, particularly if you want to be a writer. What you read teaches you more about writing than any class can teach you. I'm a great believer in sharing all that with kids, and I happen to like kids in some ways better than adults. So I think young people are quite beautiful in every sense of the word. And I like being with them because they tend to be much more free of prejudice, bias. They're open to new ideas. They react emotionally to experiences, not necessarily intellectually. So all of that is something I like a great deal.
Drawing from your own life experiences and observations, how do you incorporate personal elements into your storytelling? And are there particular themes or motifs that you find yourself revisiting frequently throughout your works?
I'll tell you, Christopher, you read all my books. There are only 80 of them or so. And then you tell me if there are any themes that keep coming up. I try not to think about that. If there are, I have no problem with that. If there's one that I would identify, it's that young people live in a world that is essentially controlled by adults. And that can be very positive. It also can be negative. And you have your parents, I had mine. That's a relationship that's always, even when it's good, it's complicated. And human experience is so varied and yet so often the same. It's hard to think of truly unique experiences. I mean, I've had a life, I don't think it's terribly interesting. I've done a couple of things that may be considered somewhat unusual. We all have stories to tell about this good moment, this terrible moment, but I don't think they're terribly unique or special. That said, I have a book coming out this year that takes place in New York City. And but it takes place in 1911. It's about a kid who's just come as an immigrant to America, and he's separated from his parents and how what happens to him. Now that hasn't happened to me, but I know New York. I'll give you an example. When I grew up in the city, I loved the subways. I still love them. So I have this kid getting on a subway for the first time ever, and I sort of look back and try to remember my experiences and incorporate that in a book like that. Very different, but I use something like that.
Throughout your career, you've likely encountered discussions surrounding book censorship and challenges to literary freedom. What is your perspective on these issues, and how do you navigate the complexities of censorship as a writer?
Well, I mean, I think all censorship is wrong. People don't talk about it so much as self-censorship. I've thought of stories to write and say, what if I write that? How are people going to react? Am I capable of writing that? What do I know of the people or the culture? In theory, say I could write about some moment in Chinese history, but I would think that it would be my responsibility to learn a great deal about Chinese culture, how it was before, how it is now, what it is if you're an immigrant, what if it is you come out of an immigrant family, et cetera, so that you have a responsibility to tell that story. You just can't make it up with stereotypes. And so sometimes I'll shy away from a story because I don't want to undertake all the study of what's involved in something like that. It comes out of respect, and bluntly, I don't want to do the work. There are things in American history which I know pretty well, but I sometimes, particularly these days, I shy away from because I don't know how it would be received. That's a shame on me, but publishers don't necessarily want that stuff either. So it's a tricky thing. But I'm against all censorship, and I never was censored. Well, my mother didn't like me reading comic books. Does that count? Horror comic books. She didn't say I couldn't read them. She said I have to sit on the stoop in front of the house and read them. I couldn't read them in the house. I don't know. Is that censorship? I don't know.
Um, is that some kind of superstition your mother has?
I don't know. I mean, I read them. So,
Okay.
but outside the door, I don't know. It's sort of an odd thing.
Before we conclude this interview, Avi, is there anything you'd like our audience to know, whether it's a personal anecdote, a message you'd like to share, or perhaps an upcoming project, even though you already told us about the New York one that you're excited about?
Well, we'll see. The main thing is, I would say to your listeners, watchers, just read whatever you want to read. If it's graphic novels, okay. If it's manga, okay. If it's Shakespeare, okay. Reading is a wonderful kind of experience. It broadens your life. It gives you emotions that you might not have had, uh, empathy with other people that you didn't think you could have. It's a way of being in the world, a bigger world than you, whoever you are before you read the book. So that's all. Read. And even if you're interested in writing, forget about writing, just read. It's much more fun, less work than writing. So, so Christopher, are you interested in writing too?
Not as much writing as I'm reading, but I am writing my personal statement since, 11th grade.
Cool. All right.
And with that, we bring our interview to a close. Avi, your dedication to crafting captivating narratives from the high seas adventure of the true confessions of Charlotte Doyle to the thought-provoking exploration of truth in Nothing But the Truth showcases your remarkable ability to engage readers on profound levels. Your many accolades stand as a testament to the powerful impact of your work on both young minds and seasoned readers alike. We eagerly anticipate your literary treasures you will continue to bestow upon us in the years to come. Thank you, Avi.
That's very kind, Christopher. It sounded a little bit like an obituary, but that's okay.
I have everything written out.
I know.
All the
Okay,
questions,
sure. Thank you. You do it very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. See you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.